start. And the first thing to say is welcome this afternoon, and this meeting is recorded. So thank you all for joining us. The recording will be available on the website. Please, as always, general housekeeping, please mute or unmute as you're speaking. Welcome everyone. Manly Business Chamber acknowledges that we're here today on the land of the Warringah people. The Warringah are the traditional owners of this land and are part of the oldest surviving continuous culture in the world. So thank you everyone for joining us here at Manly Business Chamber. So one of the joys of Manly Business Chamber, what we've really enjoyed over the last year, is the extraordinary collaboration we've seen. And today is yet another example of that. So thank you all for joining us. We have businesses and we have a panel who are ready to answer questions, we hope. And if not, we will be following up afterwards with a newsletter. So happy to do that too. So federal member for Warringah, Zali Steggall. Zali, we have a wave from you. Everyone can see you, thank you. We also have, of course, our longest title present MP, Member for Manly and Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment and Veterans, James Griffin. James, thank you for joining us.
That's right, Charlotte.
I can't help but let you know that you can't get away with that title. Northern Beaches Council CEO, Ray Brownlee. Thank you, Ray. Northern Beaches Council Mayor, Michael Regan. And we have a last minute special guest today. So we have been joined by Bridgett Barrett. Bridgett is the Executive Director of Service New South Wales for Business. So highly relevant. We are absolutely delighted to see you here, Bridgett.
Charlotte, we also have Anthony De Cruz, one of our business concierges, who I will throw the technical questions to.
Excellent.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, Anthony. Thank you very much. So delighted to have you all here this afternoon. Mediating, we have Tracy Mitski. Tracy is our Vice President, and she and I've run this gig a few times now, but she will work through the messages that come up on Slack. Both Monique and Chantel, our exec officers, have helped us to put this together, so you can give us a wave as well. They're the only ones with the branding on the back of their screen, because they're the only ones that were clever enough to work out how to do it. So we've got that happening. They will actually help us to make sure that all of this goes on the website afterwards, the newsletter, etc. So we welcome everyone today, so inclusive of our local property owners, retail, hospitality, right across the board. And we would like to start with some questions we've been asked to present by our members. Tracy, over to you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, so we'll go straight to Carmen from Manly Cobblers. And Bridgett, these questions will be either for you or Anthony. So thank you for listening. Carmen has asked, application has been lodged for business support back on 24th of July with no advice or sight of grant to date. And also for you, Bridgett or Anthony, is on a separate note, while she's very mindful of what Service New South Wales is going through, and she said she is very grateful for the support she's been getting, she said an operational issue some clarification that they've asked still needs to be resolved. She said she's reached out to Service New South Wales and has lodged a callback request back on the 28th of July. She still hasn't heard from Service New South Wales. She's also asked for some support from James Griffin's office, who is unfortunately waiting for advice from his Health Minister's office. So I guess really what Carmen is asking is when she might hear from Service New South Wales, while she's also mindful that you guys are very busy.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Thanks for the question as well, Carmen. I might just give some context if that's okay, because I suspect there might be a series of questions with this theme. As you know, the business support grant opened up on the 19th of July, and then we were asked to open up the micro business support grant on the 26th and JobSaver also on the 26th of July. Suffice to say, the demand has been quite extraordinary. So I'll give you a sense of that demand, and I'll also give you an understanding of what we're doing. At the moment, our call centre is getting about 20,000 phone calls a day from small businesses. That's a 24/7 contact centre. That contact centre, though, does, you know, a whole range of different phone calls for all across government. So they have increased their numbers by a couple of hundred people to try and deal with the volume. With my line of business, which is the service for business line, we are getting about 4,000 calls that are coming through as well. And we're getting 5,000 per day registrations for a callback. So to give you an example, we had 184 people working on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, Friday night. We managed to clear about 3,000 odd of those calls, calling people back, and last night as well. But then yesterday we got another 5,000. When we open up a line, we're getting about 300, 400 calls within 4 minutes. So the volume is huge, and there's nothing to do but apologise for that sort of volume. We have also increased our people by over 200 staff to try and address that particular callbacks, and we're clearing a lot of the duplicates. So, you know, one person's rung us 23 times trying to get on, so we're reducing those duplicates. Our callback time at the call centre now is around an hour and 15 minutes. Our normal service is around about 12 minutes, 10 minutes. Each call on its own is taking about 10 minutes because these aren't particularly easy grants to get your head around and try and understand which one you actually apply for. So where a call would normally take 2 minutes, it's taking about 10 minutes for all of those calls. We have a plan in place to, by Friday, to clear 20,000 callbacks that were actually registered from when these opened. But we'll have another 20,000 that will already be coming in just this week. We're going to run a webinar on Thursday, and that can take up to 10,000 people, and we'll run a number of those. So we're sending out emails to those that have requested a callback, and we're also using Business Connect to actually help us run those webinars. We've also worked quite closely with the tax agents, CPA, chartered accountants, because they are going to help us with a lot of those calls because they're quite specific around an accountant's line of business, if you like, and what you can actually do and what you'll be eligible for. We're also working with Treasury on who are the policymakers on some of these grants around how can we make it easier for people to apply for the micro grant. So the micro grant, guys, if you like, I'll just quickly run through those figures. As of today, we've had about 17,000 applications, and we've approved about 198,000, and we've got, you know, that 17,000 that are in progress. We've got about 869 that relate to Northern Beaches. The business grant, there's been 84,000 applications, and there's around about 59,000 of those in progress. Others have actually been paid out. And JobSaver, there's been applications of around 45,000, and there's about 24,000 that are in progress. The difficulty with some of these grants is the micro grant, for instance, which is the $1,500 repayable, is that they all have to be manually assessed. They are not straight through processing of applications. So they brought on about another 300 or 400 staff to do the manual assessments, and we're working with Treasury to talk with them around the decline rate on these and the difficulties that people are actually having to get the documentation they need to get approved. And that's actually gone up to the ministers to consider if there is not a laxing of the rules, but other ways that small business can actually provide this information to make it easier. So the reason why you might not have got a call back is that we are trying to clear that backlog and do the 4,000 calls that are coming in. We are moving more resources into the call centre, and we'll be running a series of grants. There's lots of people coming in the side door here through their MPs, etc. So please, if you have not heard anything back, my email address should be on Zoom. Send me an email and I'll get one of the BCs to give you a call and have a look at it. And I apologise for the wait times and the demand that we're not quite meeting, but we are doing everything humanly possible and have brought on hundreds and hundreds of staff to try and deal with this demand. And I suspect we could be back in the same position in October if we have recovery grants occurring. So that was a very long-winded answer.
Bridgett, that was a great answer, and there's no doubt that people are feeling your pain. I did get a comment in the chat box that was from Corinne at Corinne Slade, and she actually said, look, she understands the volume as well. Was there any way that you could present an FAQ section based on the calls that you're getting currently? Because
yeah, so I actually met with COSBOA yesterday, a number of peak business groups, and the week before, same as with the chartered accountants. So what we're actually doing is I've asked the lady or the woman that runs the assessment group, can you give us the analytics around why things are being declined and what's missing from the applications that allows them to get assessed straight away? And she's doing that. So I think what that will do is we'll package that up into something that we can then send out to the peak business groups and say, look, can you get your members to start focusing on these areas? If they put their application in with this information, it's going to be a quicker outcome for them. I think we are working with Treasury and KPMG on all of the questions that come in, because some of them are very, very technical. And then we're developing FAQs and putting them on the newsouthwales.gov website, so they're there. But I think, we need to use our partners in a way where we can go, look, we're not getting the accountant's letter, or we're not getting the BAS statement, or, can you feed this through your membership? And everyone's so willing to do that.
Great. Thank you, Bridgett. And just to finish off with Carmen, James, this is probably for you. Given that the lockdown is up to the end of August at this stage, Carmen is saying that she has not, or she doesn't recall hearing any mention of support for business in the recovery stage once we're reopened for trade. Is there a roadmap for supporting the businesses post-lockdown?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, but I have no doubt that there will be a significant package, just as there was earlier in the year, to get businesses up and running again in a whole variety of different forms. That will be a certainty.
Thanks,
yeah,
James.
and that was just my assumption. I don't have any inside intel on that one, James. That was just my assumption as well.
Great. Charlotte, I might go with another one, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep. Keep going.
Okay. Jennifer from Zing Fresh Catering, she's really struggling. She became a sole trader at the end of last year after being a full-time employee. And her accountant says that that she can't answer the online questions under the standard formula, and she doesn't fit any of the criteria, so she needs to call Service New South Wales and explain the situation. She's left messages for concierge to call them back, and obviously, Bridget, you've probably already answered part of this. She's saying that she's waited at times for 3.5 hours to get onto the business concierge, and then she's been sent back to square one. She often ends up hanging up because she's got to get back to try and do some other work to keep her business afloat. So she's wondering if the concierge hours could be extended or available on the weekends. This could be something that might also be a question for Ray or Michael from Northern Beaches Council regarding their business concierge.
With our concierges, we'll be moving all of our calls to the call centre, which is a 24-hour 7.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and they're all being further trained, and they would only have to send us something that's quite an exception to come through to the BCs. The BCs have been working every weekend, but they've been doing the callbacks for the registrations. But yet again, my email's on here, and so is Anthony. So please send it through and we'll get someone to talk to you.
Okay, that's wonderful. So I might actually leave Jennifer's there then, and we might we'll pass her on to you then, Bridget or Anthony. Thank you. And finally, with Osteo Strong, he's a new business in Manly, and has actually been doing the fit out leading up to the lockdown. Lockdown happened, hasn't been able to open, so he actually has no financials to show any losses. But clearly he's trying to, keep the business alive. He's still having to pay rent and he's still paying staff. So he's wondering if there's anything that can be done for businesses such as his, which are brand new. Not sure. That might.
Yeah, there is some stuff. I know there was discussion, but I don't believe the Treasury's come back to us yet around rental assistance. And I'm not sure where that's actually up to at this point in time. And I know we had that previously. Anthony, is there something out of your little bag of toolkit there that you could recommend?
Yes, there is the rental assistance for landlords, which is available. We can actually provide and direct the customer to that. And maybe if we can get some information about the customer, I can actually have a chat and provide that link. Even if they haven't started the business, there is the tenancy and landlord's assistance available.
Oh, I think Anthony may have misunderstood the question, or I've misunderstood your answer. Osteo Strong hasn't actually opened yet for business.
Yeah, that's right. But
he's paying rent.
Yeah, I get it. So they are at the moment renting some premises. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is rental assistance which the landlord can access, which means the landlord can then pass on that to the customer from a rental perspective.
Yes, sure. Okay, thank you for that. And in terms of any type of grants for a new business like this?
At this stage, there's none, as Bridget mentioned, because it has to. We have to show an income, and also you need to be a business that's employing people. So since nothing of that is in the books, it's at this stage anyway, it is hard to apply for any of the grants that are currently available.
Okay, thank you. Charlotte, will I hand over to you or?
Yeah, that's sure. Okay, thank you. So the rent question came up a few times last time as well. And I think one of the things we'd like to just highlight here is the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner. They have a mediation service, which is really highly relevant and will be very helpful for anyone. And we can actually send you the link Chris Lamont wasn't able to attend today, but he certainly was happy to support us in any way and any of the businesses. Anthony, is that something that you do too? You recommend?
That's correct. So as part of the business concierge service, once we talk to the customer and if there's a requirement for that support, we direct them to Business Connect, as you mentioned, and provide them with a link so that they can then approach and get that support as well.
Great, thank you. Okay. Another question I have here is from Mayor Mansfield. JobSaver is around until lockdown finishes. However, some businesses won't snap back to normal immediately. So this refers back to what Tracy's raised and what you mentioned as well, Bridgett and James. There is a really large call for knowing what's going to happen in the future, and it actually relates back to the confidence for business. I know it's in the wings, but we sort of need it to be out there now so that we can be helping businesses to let them know there will be some support in the future. So we'll be raising that again as much as we can. We have a Zoom with Mossman Chamber and Senator Andrew Bragg this evening with the Federal Treasurer, and we'll be raising that question with him then too. So we need a plan. I think all businesses really need to know that there's a plan in place.
Yeah. And look, you know, I tried to get one of our Treasury colleagues to this today, but I gave them a little bit late notice. So I actually think, Charlotte, that would be helpful at a future meeting as well. So when we get these grants, we work with Treasury around how we're going to implement them. They you know, go up through the ministers and they're signed off. We then go through a process where we say to our Treasury colleagues, look, our data is showing us that hypothetically 25% are being declined for this reason. And then we will work with Treasury to see if we can influence the scope or the policy setting of that grant. And the same for future grants. So happy to talk with you offline, Charlotte, but perhaps a Treasury rep here as well would be useful.
Yep, fantastic. Thanks, Bridgett. We will do that. Chantel will help me with that, I'm sure. Yes, she's smiling. She's on it. Okay, so another question I have here is just that there has previously been dedicated accountant phone lines at Service New South Wales. And that would help because quite a few of the businesses are going, if they can't get through to Service New South Wales, they're going to their accountants. If they're accountants that have a call for a variety of their clients, they could actually be getting direct through like they do with ATO or something similar. Have you got that in the wings, Bridgett?
No, we're not doing a dedicated accountant line. We've met with the major accountant groups a number of times now. Our corporate colleagues, we're having a forum with them as well, the accountant groups, and we've also developed a specific FAQ toolkit for accountants to actually help deal with some of those inquiries. And the accountant groups are then sort of messaging their membership to say, bring your inquiries here directly. So that's the way that we've tackled that particular. I don't really want to open up another channel line that's going to not meet people's expectations in wait times, etc. So that's the mechanism we're using this time.
Okay, and thank you. And on to that point on the FAQ, we were forwarded that by Northern Beaches Council earlier today. I've already forwarded it on to Mayor Mansfield and they've come back saying how helpful it is. So it does answer some of the questions that they had. So perfect timing. So we'll make sure that everyone has access to that as well, I think, in our next newsletter, because that, although it is primarily there for the accountants and maybe questions that businesses can ask themselves.
Charlotte.
Zali, I've got a question. Oh,
no, that's what I wanted to highlight, Zali.
Oh, Zali.
Sorry, I was just on one of the questions that was asked before. Some of the feedback we're receiving is for small businesses, especially ones in relation to the micro business grant, because so much of the calculation is made on wage expenses. And the problem is if the bulk of the expense of the business doesn't come from wage, actually comes from rent, from insurance, from operating costs, energy costs, the current calculation is not really giving sufficient support to small businesses to meet those expenses. So $1,500 for a micro business a week, that can get eaten up by rent and just very basic expenses. So what I'm hearing, and I'd really like to hear from participants or the chamber, is how the calculation of the micro grants, the job saver in particular, off your salary expenses, your wage expense, is that the right metric to see how much support you need to stay alive?
Great question. So Tracy, do you have something related to that, or do we have someone online that would actually like to answer that directly to Zali?
Charlotte, I don't have anything direct to that, but I know that Corinne Slade was hoping to ask a question direct to possibly Zali or James or Bridgett. So Corinne, do you want to? I can't see you, Corinne, but
I'm here.
There she is. There she is.
Thank you. Zali's also been trying to help us. We've been in conversation. So my thing is, I'm really frustrated, and I've had a lot of these Zoom calls, and I worked with Chris Lamont over the Christmas period. And the feeling I get is there's nobody actually understanding how small business works when they're going, oh, we'll write you all a check or we'll give you this money. So a lot of the businesses have culled staff just to survive. They're working harder than ever. And this job saver amount is based on the last BAS quarter, which does not normally reflect our normal business operations because we're down. And then the minimum you get is 1,500. And because our staffing is down, most of us are only getting the 1,500. So for example, this is my third lockdown, as it is a load of people around us, and rents, insurances, like all the business expenses. And I feel like the people sitting there making the decisions are getting a wage, they're not affected, they don't understand small business, and we're bleeding. Now, we've kept ourselves going for 2 lockdowns. We're well and truly in our third, and people are closing shop, selling off stuff. We've had suicides. This is serious stuff. And with respect to all of you that are working and getting paid well for doing a job, I don't feel like anybody's really connected to small business, because if you think 40% of staff, which is say 20% of our business expenses, actually is any significance, then you're clearly missing. There's a gap, massive gap. And the fact that you're taking so long to actually give people the money when they've got business credit cards and landlords, beyond me. And I've had people in tears. I can't do a thing about it. I'm only a voice for a whole bunch of people.
Thank you, Karen. I think that's absolutely from the heart. Completely understand. I think from the chamber, we hear a lot of this as well. I know that state, council, federal have all turned around as much as they possibly can, but as you say, sometimes it's just not enough. Have you got any?
It's not enough.
Karen,
it is the misunderstanding.
Let's go back to. I'd just like to hear James Griffin. You've been pretty close to this. We've been talking to you a lot. Have you got a comment you'd like to make?
Yeah, look, I hear you, Karen, absolutely, and I think all the businesses on this call, and many of you, there's so many familiar names and people that I've worked with shoulder to shoulder on, yes, what is our third lockdown now? I think it's fair to say that no matter how quickly or the amount of money that can be shoveled out the door, whether it's the great work that the council have done in withholding fees, the work and the sheer volume that Service New South Wales are going through at the moment, and in addition, the advocacy of Zali and the federal government and the work that they're doing. None of us, no one on this call wants to be in this situation. It is heartbreaking, and to have felt the pressure and the challenges that fell on all of us over Christmas and New Year, when that was meant to be a golden window for our Northern Beaches community to trade really well and to set ourselves up for what we all know we typically struggle through winter. To then have a kick in the guts like this with this most recent outbreak is frustrating, frightening, challenging, all of the above, and you've articulated that really, really well, Karen, and I thank you for doing that. I think if we step back for one moment what we need to do is get as quickly as possible to a point where lockdowns are no longer the solution or the approach to dealing with this issue. In the meantime, what we need to do is work smarter and more effectively at a Service New South Wales perspective to turn around the grants, and Bridgett's perspective on giving us the sheer volume of numbers, I think, goes a long way in helping us understand the challenges in getting that out the door. And it's been really good to see some of the questions in the chat here around, the criteria and trying to get it out as quickly as possible. So I hear you, Karen, and please know that a number of us feel this as much as the owners and operators do that we've been working with over many months now to try and get it turned around. And you have a commitment from all of us that we will get this back to the people that make decisions as best and as quickly as we can in order to help them make better decisions to get money out into the bank accounts of people that are on this call and to the businesses that we know and love in our local community.
But surely can the algorithm be reassessed? Because if it's just based on staffing, it's not in so many cases even close to the truth and what's needed.
Yeah, so you're to the detail of your comment around the fact that the BAS is looking at the previous quarter, which is where you were down. I hear you loud and clear, and I've taken that note. I don't know if Bridgett or Anthony have detail on that, but I can certainly go to Minister Dominello's office and Treasury and say, well, look, what can you just articulate to me why this is the position that you've landed on? And they might have a view, and we can contest that with what you've just put to me.
And while you do, can you go back to the report that Chris Lamont wrote when he worked with all of us here and put forward, you guys paid for Chris Lamont to do a report as the Small Business Commissioner, but then you went, oh, it's still too hard, and you didn't take on the recommendations. So we were all like, what the hell did we do all that work for? And then it was, oh, it's just too hard. We couldn't work it out.
Yeah, so just to stop you there.
Like we've been smashed all the time.
Yeah, so I didn't do that, just to be clear, and I haven't read the report, but it's good that Chris came out and he pounded the pavement, certainly around here in Manly and went up further north. So yes, I hear you, and I'll ask some questions.
And we did, that did come up, Karen, just so you know, in a meeting that we had with Minister Tudhope actually previously. So, and I raised that with him at the time because it was a white paper done in January, I believe, regarding the forecast. And it comes back to our earlier conversations that we need a plan. We need a plan. We needed a plan from January. There was a plan drawn up, but it hasn't been acted on. So I think we are still pushing that and chasing that. So thank you for your points. And if I were you, I'd absolutely take James up on his offer to push the BAS comparison request. And again, like anything, as we're saying within the chamber, the louder we are, the more we're heard. So thank you, Karen. Zali, you had something you wanted to add?
Just further on that point from Karen, maybe for James and my benefit. So if it's not the 40% of wage expense, keeping in mind we'll hear from government why using wage, what is your next, from a businesses involved here, is it your rental expense? Is it your power? Is it insurance? What are your, if we could get a really good sense of your key liabilities that are making it incredibly difficult for businesses to, in fact, ensure they're still there after lockdown. Because I know there's also the problem of the disconnect that now without JobKeeper kept your staff linked to business, so you could get them doing minimum amount of work in lockdown without having to meet a wage expense. Whereas now, essentially, they're getting that payment like a social security payment through Centrelink, which means there's no incentive for them to come and do minimal work for business. It'd be really good for us to be able to have very concrete examples of what are the expenses that you simply can't meet under current packages.
We have fixed expenses which we report to the ATO on, so it can't be that hard.
Yeah, so this is something that's coming up against for groups like hairdressing salons who actively can't get out and do their work, whereas there are other businesses where they can be working because they have lower overheads. So it is a massive issue. I think it is being reviewed, and we need to keep being loud on that, Karen. So thank you for raising that point. So can we go back to Tracy? Have you got any other questions online?
I do.
Yep.
I do. Actually, I've got two that are very similar. One from Justin Herald, who's in the chat with us right now, and also from Simon Smith at Southern Cross Catering, Coaching, sorry. They're both talking about the fact that they don't qualify for JobSaver because, well, in Simon's instance, he's a director who's taking drawings as opposed to a wage. His company has a family trust structure, so he can only distribute the trust earnings at the end of the financial year instead of a wage. And because of that, he can only claim for his staff members' wages, as they're the only ones that whose wages have been reported on the quarterly BAS. So his issue is that he can he can't claim.
Check with your local healthcare provider to see if Insure Plus Strength is right for you.
Interesting. Not sure where that's coming from. Thank you. So what Justin's saying is that he ticks all the boxes in terms of eligibility. He's got a 72% decrease in turnover compared to 2019, but he simply can't claim. Justin's saying something quite similar. And he's being told that he has to live off the grant, which is ridiculous due to the fixed business costs that he has to incur. So not sure who that should go to. Perhaps that should go to, I don't know, James or Zali.
I think that's a really good comment and one to note. I mean, I can't, there's nothing that I can really respond to specifically about that situation other than to take it on board, which I think is a really worthwhile use of this time, is to collect some feedback and you know, sharpen up the response where people are falling through the cracks, like the example that you've just given.
Thank you, James.
Could I just jump in there also? I'm an accountant. We're hearing that a lot from clients as well. So obviously the package is written so the higher the wages, the higher the subsidy that you'll get. A lot of clients have different structure setups. So you might have a client who has a proprietary limited business, a company that takes a wage for himself of $500,000. If he's set up as a sole trader, he's going to get $1,000 a week, or he's a partner in a partnership, or he's a beneficiary of a trust. Whereas if he's set up as a proprietary limited company, he's going to get a hell of a lot more than that because he's going to get 40% of that wage subsidy. So you got people saying, hang on, I'm paying the same amount of tax as this other guy, yet he's getting triple the amount of subsidy when I have the same expenses that he does.
So
Mayor, is it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you go.
So Mayor, is it? So I've got this right. Is it? And I'm sure that the BCs are getting these questions or this data as well, and we'll feed it through to Treasury. But you're saying that just solely because of the structure set up is stopping these people from being able to claim the higher amounts of money?
Yes, because it's you've got employing businesses and non-employing businesses. If you're a employing business that isn't a company, so the proprietor of that business is either a sole trader or a partnership, he doesn't record his wages on the BAS statements. Therefore, he's not getting subsidised for his profit or his wages. Whereas if you're set up through that company structure, you are. So people who are set up as a company structure are getting compensated more than the people who are set up in these other structures, when effectively they're paying the same amount of tax on the same income.
Thank you, James. That's great clarity. Yeah,
that's really good. The same thing's happening to my best mate. He's a stonemason, and that's the same issue. So it's good that thank you for clarifying that. And I think if you were to go through and do the data analytics, Bridgett and Anthony, that's probably an example of one of the things that's clogging up the lines.
Absolutely. Great point. Thanks, James. So that's James. James, you're Mayor Mansfield, who are gold members of the Chamber, and also working primarily across the Northern Beaches. So I'm sure you'll be happy to share your details as well, James, if people want to come back to you for any queries.
Definitely.
Thank you, because I've just put that on public notice, so you're in. Okay, thank you. And another question that we have, which actually closely relates to the fact that we are Manly is a tourism-based area, is when you're comparing periods. This is something I was speaking to Sydney Kayaks about, Manly Kayaks on Saturday, is that if you're comparing one period with another, and one of the periods was actually a really heavily bad weather or rainy days, they're not as busy. It has nothing to do with COVID, nothing to do with anything else, but they're obviously not being able to show that decrease in revenue. So that's where they are again making that direct call to Service New South Wales to get a manual, excuse me, a manual assessment. Is there any comment on that? Any thoughts on that? How we can handle that, Bridgett, maybe?
No, look, I can only reiterate what I've said previously, is that we're getting, particularly over the micro grant, I think we had, an extraordinarily high decline rate from the assessment team, and we're feeding that back through to Treasury, and I believe that they're putting that up something through the ERC, the ministers, to say, look, we're thinking we should have a look at this scope of this grant. And so, we have the BCs across all of the state who, in a non-COVID time when we get grants, whether they're bushfire or they're floods, we have our own little argy-bargy that goes on around the scope of the grants. We get the intel and we go, listen, let's talk about the scope. I think, so we collect all that data and we continually, feed through. This is the cohort that are missing out, and these are the reasons why they're missing out. And we do our best to influence what we can do in that space.
Okay, thanks, Bridgett. So yes, you do what you can to influence, but who actually is accountable for actually ensuring that we get some revenue to companies like Karen Slade and the others that we're talking about, and getting some answers? What's the interim solution to between now and...
The government, will, crisis cabinet met. And James, you might be more across this, but crisis cabinet meet and they go, we need to be doing something for businesses. And then Treasury is tasked with developing a grant, the policy around the grant and the criteria that's actually needed. And that's why I strongly encourage you to have a Treasury rep on these sorts of calls, because they can give more of their rationale around, the risks that they take into consideration and the cohorts that they're actually looking at. And, we sit down then and we develop the grant and we administer the grant. And as we're administering it, we might go, we've had 20,000 calls and 5,000, I'm just pulling numbers out of my head here, 5,000 of them are saying we're not eligible for something here. So you'll normally find peak advocacy groups. There's a whole range of different ways where we, groups and ourselves try and influence how the scope of the grants are actually developed.
Okay, thanks, Bridgett. Well, we'll be following up on this with, as I said, Minister Toot has a small business reference group, and some of these specific questions we need answers as soon as possible. So we'll be chasing that. Tracy, have we got some more questions?
Sorry, Charlotte, could I ask something of Bridgett?
Yes, Sally, sorry.
Sorry, I was raising my hand. In relation to, so with travel agents, with their packages, we've had a situation where initially they were knocked back, and they were, as a result of sort of advocating and finding out what was going on, they were encouraged to reapply, and that actually then the process got better. So for all these micro businesses that have been declined, is there a clear process for them to reapply and sort it out, or do they go back to the back of the queue? How is that, like, can we facilitate, is there a way that we can advocate for helping businesses that have maybe missed out on a technicality, or I don't know the grounds they've been declined for, but is that it? Hope is lost, they can't apply, or encouraging everyone to reapply?
Great
Well,
question, Zali.
Reapplying probably is not the answer unless policy change occurs. So it depends on the reason that they've been knocked back. Quite a large number of them have been knocked back because all of the micro grants are being manually assessed and they're putting in an application with no documentation attached to it at all. So if it, you know, the assessment group will actually say to them, can you please supply your documentation? And if the documentation and they say, no, we can't, then, you know, they might get a call then from a BC, is there any other way we can actually help you? So, you know, one is around actually not being eligible under the current policy guidelines. Two is around not supplying the actual information that's actually requested. And that's why we're working with a number of the accountant groups and business groups to say, please get the applications to have this actual information. If it's because they're not eligible, that's a policy change then. And that's when we might go, well, look, we've got a cohort here. And we have Treasury on our steering committee. So what actually happens, without boring you with too much detail here, we set up a steering committee for every grant and we have Treasury on that steering committee. And we will feed up to them, here's the information we're getting.
Okay, thank you, Bridgett. Thanks, Zali. I think there's definitely some follow-up to this that we're going to need to be chasing. Tracy?
Zali, just while we have you, Melanie from Pure Whole Foods has sent in a couple of questions. One of them is regarding legislation which states that July 13 was the first day and acted where rental guidelines were set forth for businesses. Melanie would like to know, why wouldn't they not backdate it to at least 1st of July or 26th of July when lockdown began? Being a tenant, she is responsible for full rent up until that date when they weren't able to trade as usual.
Look, I've got to say, I don't know why it was July 13, but the rental question is a real problem. I've got a number of people approaching me, and I know, James, you probably do as well, around the code being made mandatory, because that seems to be a huge problem. And obviously the start date is going to be an issue. I don't know why my video keeps doing that. Melanie, can I, yes. Can I look into that? I don't know the answer of why they've done July 13, but it doesn't make sense if your period of time from which you were, in fact, already reduced trading from lockdown was earlier. Unfortunately, a plan was asked to be in place at Christmas time so that if we had any further lockdowns, we could snap straight into the measures that were needed. And unfortunately, we keep on going through the same, negotiate a package when the lockdown comes. It takes a couple of weeks. I think there's always a hope that, look, it's only going to be a week and then we can all get back to business. And I think the reality sets in that this is going to be longer than just a few days, then there's thought is turned to what package and what support's needed. But can I look into that and get back to you? James, you might know the answer.
Sure.
I don't know why July 13.
Well, I think that would be helpful because there are a lot of people in my position and they're writing letters to their landlords to, you know, try to manage and negotiate, and are paying extra or paying, you know, in advance. And I see a lot of other businesses where I'd like to advocate and help them, where they're not even aware of what's even happening. So they're not even going for the grants that are offered. So thank you so much, and we can talk again.
Yeah, I'd just like to raise as well I know it's hard to get through to Service New South Wales, but I know that Northern Beaches Council have their business concierge service, and in some instances they may be able to answer some of these questions briefly. Michael or Ray, do you have anything you'd like to add on that?
Not really, you said it all. We've got lots of calls going there. We've got lots of assistance happening. We're taking a lot of the feedback and pointing people in the right direction, and taking our lead from Anthony and others. So yeah, if there's more we can do, we will. And yeah, that's, you pretty much summed it up.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Matthew. I just had Matthew Adderton.
Yep, thank you. Hey, just a quick one, and it might be, I mean, we're all fighting for saving businesses. We're all fighting to try and do our best and not in the criteria, not in, and maybe in it, but is there any grant or is there anything that actually is going towards maybe mental health for some of these people? Because I think when you look at these people, and I spoke to a couple today and they're getting some money, but their wife was like, I just don't want to get out of the car anymore. I just want to sit here. I don't want to do anything. So I'm just wondering if, you know, all these grants, and we're looking at figures and criteria and all that, but we're going to, you know, look after the people who try and make these businesses work on a regular basis. And I don't know whether there's much leeway to the micro business grants, or hey, there's something there that we, you know, that's factored in. But I just think that, you know, talking to a few people, it really is not enough sometimes, or sometimes they're hurdling and trying to do paperwork and trying to run a business and seeing bills come in, and it's just getting too much. So I'm just wondering if there's any leeway, any grant that you can take back to the leaders to say, hey, we need to actually have something that might take into account that there's struggling people out there. And I was talking to someone yesterday, and, you know, if you put solar on your roof, you get a rebate. You do this, you get a rebate. Where is it that if someone puts themselves through mental health training and all that sort of stuff, that they get something back through business or something back? Is there anything that anyone's ever considered, or that is there that can be shared with people to help them out?
It's a great question, Matthew. I think mental health has been really high as a priority across, I know, a lot of the work that we've been doing and that I'm hearing. So I don't know if there is any direct answer that anyone would like to add to that.
Yeah, Matthew, you're spot on, and perhaps our timing was a little bit off, but in the intervening period between the Christmas and New Year's lockdown on the Northern Beaches and this one, through the Chamber of Commerce, we had attempted to put on a free mental health evening for small business owners, and facilitated by a group, Man Anchor, who provide a well-trained organisation. And we didn't get a great uptake, but I think that was because everybody was just too busy trying to get on with getting back on their feet. And this time around, we are also offering some free programs between 50 and 90-minute workshops. And we were trying to identify a particular group that might like to do that. So I'd like to offer it again to the Chamber now, that perhaps off the back of what you've just said, Matthew, that we look at putting that on in the coming weeks. It will be an online 50 to 90-minute session specifically tailored to small business owners that are needing it and wanting it. And, you know, we could even look at extending that to family and friends and partners to do that. I also know that we're doing free mental health workshops for parents and carers, given that homeschooling is, you know, a challenge as well, and for carers that are out there. And that's taking place as well. So I can share the details of that with Charlotte, and she can send that through to all the members of the Chamber. But you're spot on, and so we can put that program together for free for Northern Beaches small business owners.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, James.
Sorry, I was just going to also jump in, Matthew, because Amy from Itchy Feet Digital has said she thinks there might be work cover grants for this. She said it's not especially for COVID, but you should perhaps look into it, or you could look into it further.
We're actually as well, Tracy, partnering on mental health referral, the old work cover, Safe Work New South Wales now, yeah. And we do referrals, and you know, Matthew, the BCs quite often will come into contact with a business who's in dire straits. So we do referrals, but I don't know of any grant as such that's come out from a COVID perspective. But Anthony, do you know of anything else other than our referrals?
No, that's it, Bridgett. I mean, again, like as you mentioned, we do refer that even at any of the presentations that I've been to, we direct to our page for that support.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I just say, it's a great point, and we are getting a lot of feedback of people really struggling with mental health. The only concern is I wouldn't want to put something else on businesses to have to manage or roll out. I think business owners have really got enough on their plate. It's really about assisting them rather than when your comment, I was understanding it that you wanted, if businesses were rolling something out for their employees, then would they get a credit or some kind of allocation for it? I think it needs to be a service offered to businesses as opposed to expected of businesses to provide to staff, because I think there's really enough already on businesses' plate.
Yes, mandating something else.
Well, I think what I was trying to say is that, it's a matter of, I suppose, putting themselves through some of these things as well and incentivizing to do that. And I don't think a lot of people don't want to do that because it's, it still has a bit of a stigma, in regards to it. And so I think that it's not like trying to make anybody do anything or put anything on a business, but I can tell you that if there's a way of doing it, and the Safe Work does have some mental health, it's got a great website there, but to actually find it, I went and digged around and found it last night. There's some great stuff on there to do a test and see where your mind's at, and you can answer some questions, and there's some things. So some great stuff that's there. But all I'm saying is, how do we go about not forcing anyone, not making them do it, but ultimately saying, if you do, and you can help your wife out or your partner out or your whatever it may be out, then why don't we incentivize? They go, train yourself, get your head around it, because a lot of the time that the training's not there and you're saying what you think's right, but maybe it's not what potentially should be said. So I'm not trying to force anybody to do extra work, but I'm just trying to say, if you did do it, then it could be helpful for everyone around you, and business related and family related.
It's a great one to suggest, Matthew, and we'll take that up, I think, definitely. Look,
as an overall perspective, can I point a few things out, please? I understand some of the sentiment about looking after all these issues about refunds and financial support, but ultimately the businesses stand on their own for what they do and what they can create. So ultimately we need structural support to be able to carry us through in these sort of events. We've had this lockdown and COVID thing for over 18 months. We're still just getting the megaphone diplomacy on a day-by-day basis through the news items saying so many cases, somebody this and that. But there hasn't been any announcements on the real support to help put structural things in place for businesses. You look at the federal government, I think they've done a reasonable job of the health minister in dealing with the COVID sort of thing. However, the state government hasn't contributed perhaps nearly as much as the federal government has in financial terms.
Sorry, one moment. Excuse me, I'm going to have to interrupt you. I'm really sorry. We've got 2 minutes to go. I didn't catch your name. I've got you as Sue on there.
Sorry,
but I don't think you're Sue. If you, David, if you'd like to make a note, we'll make sure that goes out across to everyone through in our next newsletter. Any other comments you want to make? I think we'll attach the comments in our next newsletter. So sorry to cut you short.
All levels of government have a responsibility, and I think we're overlooking the fact that structural support from the 3 levels of government need to be much more focused and directed towards supporting small business.
Thank you. Thank you. That's an absolute point and a great point. And I am all in anything we can do to support small business. To wrap this up, I think we're across small business, any business on the Northern Beaches, anyone within the Manly Chamber, Mossman as well, we're looking at. I think it's everywhere. We really need to be supportive and proactive. Thank you so much for attending. For Bridgett, I'm not going to do everyone's titles at the end. For Bridgett, for you, Zali, for Anthony coming with Bridgett, for James, for Ray, for Michael, and I think, of course, everyone, the Manly Business Chamber. Just to let you know that Manly Business Chamber is a not-for-profit. In response to questions about salaries, etc. We are doing what we do because we're volunteers, apart from our 2 exec officers. So we are open to being contacted at any time. If you need any further information, we will have a follow-up Zoom again, I'm sure, sadly, in a few weeks, because we might be in the same position. We also have the opportunity we are mediating a session with the Federal Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, this evening with Mossman Chamber. So we have put a call out for questions. We've only got half an hour with him this evening, but we're happy to address anything that we can. We're trying to accumulate and put things together at the moment. So good luck, everyone. Please keep fingers crossed. Service New South Wales, thank you for your support. Thank you very much for coming along. Your stats are terrifying, and I hope that you get some quick wins, and we can get some better answers for people soon, because it's obviously we're talking mental health, survival, and we're in winter. We've got months to go till we get to where we are. So thank you, everyone. Lovely to see you. This will be on our website, and if you want a copy of the Zoom, please don't hesitate to contact us at Manly Chamber. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.